1,
2,
3,
4.
Monster movie.
Fun time, go! Monster movie.
Fun time, go. Monster.
Movie.
Fun time.
Go!
Monster movie. Fun time, go.
With Precious D and Honeybee.
Fun time, go!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and neighbors, welcome to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. 31 Days of Horror. Oops, all werewolves. This is day number 30. And my special guest for today, returning to the show, is Eric McEver. Welcome back, Eric.
Hello, it is good to be back. Yes. I'm very curious at this stage. You've been talking all werewolves all the time. What revelations have you come across? What patterns? What surprises? Have you had any insights into the topic?
Yes. As those who've been listening along will know that I have identified 3 basic types of werewolf movies and 3 basic types of werewolves.
Okay.
Not all fit into the movie category, but most of them do. There's a general trend. Type 1 is the werewolf's journey. Some poor schmo gets bitten, usually, but not always, by a werewolf. Occasionally they're born that way, and even less occasionally they're the result of an experiment. But some poor guy or gal gets infected in some way and then has to learn to deal with the situation or not deal with it. And often, but not always, ends up dead at the end.
So
Type
two things
2,
are coming to mind before you get to type 2. So first of all, I guess that would obviously be poor, sweet, wonderful Larry Talbot.
Yes.
The other, are you going to cover, there's a film, I think the title is just Werewolf. It was featured at MST3K, but it involved a fossilized wolfman getting unearthed and then various scientific tests. It stick with me because it's one of the only, well, it is the only movie I've seen, possibly not the only movie in existence where a werewolf drives a car.
It is definitely not the only one because Wolf Cop drives a car.
Oh dear. Okay.
But that is a much more recent film and its sequel. Yeah,
okay, well, please carry on.
2 so far. So far, there's 2 Wolf Cop.
Much
films.
like Samurai Cop. Okay.
Yeah. So, no, we're not doing that one. I know the one you mean. I've seen it on MST3K. We're not covering that one. But we have covered a couple where some scientist is responsible for
perhaps for the best.
The werewolfism.
Please carry on to part 2. Yes.
Type 2 is there's a werewolf among us. Somebody's, going around killing people. They got to figure out who it is. And sometimes you'll have elements of both of those in a film. The poor schmuck has to figure out who it was that bit him in order to try to cure himself, maybe. Okay. And then type 3, which one of the movies we're discussing kind of falls in that category. Type 3 is the secret lives of werewolves. There's a whole werewolf society, and it's got a bunch of dumb rules, and we usually get introduced to it through some non-werewolf who stumbles across things, maybe sees some girl he likes or something and gets dragged into all of this nonsense. That would be Underworld.
That would be.
Underworld and Twilight both have elements of that. We're not doing any of those.
That's good. In my mind, The Howling would probably be the example of that.
The ones we've covered, are American Werewolf in Paris and Blood and Chocolate.
Yes.
Both have that element. And to a lesser degree, the movie we're discussing in a moment, Wolf Children, has that. But before we get into Wolf Children, we're going to briefly, folks, you're getting a 2 for 1 or 1.5 for 1. We're going to talk a little bit about a film that fits in with the usual theme of this show. It's called Legendary Giant Beast Wolfman versus Godzilla.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Well, do you care to introduce?
It's a fan film with some semi-professional elements to it. It is incomplete, although there are supposedly 10 hours worth of footage
Yeah.
recorded. The thing I watched on YouTube was under a half an hour. And then
Yeah.
there was like another half hour or so behind the scenes stuff. It's also on internetarchive.org.
Yeah. Well, I've seen it as well, or at least most of it. I haven't researched this exhaustively. My understanding is that there's significantly more information available online, but my understanding of it was a created by a staff member from Showa era Toho films, and hence he had access to I guess some equipment, but certainly know-how to build suits and build miniatures, and it was his passion project. And I mean, it's interesting because I've heard more about it through the foreign the foreign community of fans than through my Japanese network. I think that's possibly a generational thing. Like it doesn't tend to come up in conversation over in Japan, but it's what I've seen is quite impressive. I mean, it and more than a little surreal. I mean, like the best parts, it feels like it's a bit of a Mandela effect going on, because it feels like you're watching clips from a Godzilla film that it's like, wait a minute, which is this one from? It's quite well done, and on the one hand, it's a pity that never completed, and I mean, at this stage, probably never will be completed, but. On the other, it's a testament to just the joys of creation that this genre inspires. I'm certainly living proof of that.
Right? Yes. For folks who don't know, Eric directed the film Ike Boys that has some kaiju in it, some tokusatsu.
It definitely has more than a little bit. Yes, please check out Ike Boys. It's streaming on a variety of platforms. I guess maybe the most easy would be Amazon Prime, but it's readily available. So please check out, enjoy. No werewolves in that though. So no. I guess back to the topic.
Yeah, I found it what I watched incomprehensible. And I don't think that was just because I don't speak Japanese and it wasn't dubbed, because there wasn't all that much dialogue. There was a bunch of monster fight, and yeah, that all looked fairly good. It says here on Wikipedia that he purchased some of the materials directly from Toho.
Yeah, well, he had inside patent.
But there's also some human stuff in there that does not. It's like watching a separate film. Not just in that it's not connected to the monster stuff, but it also just visually looks different, like the film stock, or maybe the fact that it's shot outside instead of on the studio set. It just doesn't match up very well. There seems to be some kind of gangster stuff going on, but I had no idea what that had to do with the Godzilla stuff. And
well, arguably that makes
train. That makes it what?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, so arguably that makes it of a piece with the many of the Showa era Godzilla films. I'm actually
Sure.
I have been teaching a class on Japanese monsters, and we recently watched and broke down the original Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, and it's pretty striking how much of that film is basically a tourism advertisement for Okinawa. So I don't know, like it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be a Godzilla film without non sequiturs in the human plot.
Yeah. There was also some military rolling out stuff, which is pretty standard. And at first I was like, oh, I thought it was stock footage. And then I was like, no, I think this maybe was original, because I feel like stock footage would have looked better. I thought it didn't look good enough to be stock footage. the uniforms were a little, sloppy, and it just, I don't know. So I have no idea what's going on in this thing other than a giant white-furred werewolf is fighting Godzilla. The Godzilla suit looks a little weird, so I think they may have made it themselves. I don't think they borrowed or bought a Toho suit.
It's definitely definitely King Goji vibes. It's impressive though.
Um, and let's see what else about it. Yes, Wikipedia thinks that they're still working on it. I have no idea. Of course, it's all unofficial, so it's never been properly released, but you can watch it on YouTube. In our episode Curse of the Werewolf, we discussed that although it's not that great of a movie and the werewolf's hardly in it, it does seem influential because it's mentioned in some other werewolf movies. And this is another movie that apparently was influenced by Hammer's The Curse of the Werewolf.
I like Curse of the Werewolf. It's
not a bad movie.
Yeah, I always thought that the werewolf looked strangely pensive. The design, I don't know. He looks, when he transforms, he looks less monster and more, I don't know, like he has a bit of the Tom Cruise here going on, staring thoughtfully into the middle distance. That's my interpretation of it. So maybe he's just sort of seeing the long shadow of the future.
The direct influence I'm seeing though is the white fur on the werewolf.
This is yes. Yeah, so I guess that would be the more obvious influence than facial expressions.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I hope that this thing, it would be rare, but not out of the question for a film to take 40 years to get finished. So, rooting for him. I want to see this thing done proper.
I would appreciate a full version of it, yes, but the less than a half hour that we see is, as I said, incomprehensible. The monster fights are perfectly fine, but there's no real story to speak of. So, but they got 10 hours of footage, so there's got to be a story in there somewhere, I would think.
It's crowdfunding. Make it happen.
Yeah,
make it happen, crowd.
Well, I mean, I think the rights to the name Godzilla is, I think, the biggest issue that they're gonna have with
Toho. They're all nice and well. They realize that they can't just make them any money at all. They're very loose and easy with that sort of stuff.
Yes, they're famous for being very generous with their license. We'll take a quick break here, and then we'll come back and talk about Wolf Children. And we're back. Wolf Children is from 2012. It is animated, directed by Mamoru Hosoda, screenplay by Satoko Okudera and Mamoru Hosoda. And let's see, we won't do the whole cast because there's two casts depending on how you watch it. But so I'll say the character and then the Japanese voice actor and the English voice actor. We have Hana by Ao Miyazaki and Colin Klinkenbeard. The Wolfman Ukami by Tako Osawa and David Matranga. These English names are not being any easier.
I can help with the Japanese if needed. Not gonna be able to have much input on Michael Holosud.
Yuki is Haru Kuroki and Momoka Ono, because there's a younger one and an older one. Jad Saxon and Laura Woodhull are the English voices, and Ame is Yokito Nishi and Amin Kabe, and then Micah Solsad and Allison Victroen. Good Lord. The English voices. Victorin. That's it. Alison Victorin. And that's all the cast that I'm going to read. It's a big cast, and there's 2 of them. So, yeah, this is an anime film. Let's see. Box office is 55 million, but I don't see a budget.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, a film of this level generally would I'm going to guess between 10 and 20 million, but that's just that's purely guessing from I don't know, from comparable films.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably about right.
Very, very popular, and continues to be quite popular in Japan.
This movie?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. Good. Good to
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Mamoru Hosoda, he's become a household name. And this is definitely definitely one of the films that I mean he'd been on his way for a while, but this is where he got his own studio and really started to get on the map. Yeah, it was fun for me watching this, seeing the credits. It's I knew for a while that some people I'd worked with had been in Hosoda's orbit, but I recognized actually quite a few of the names in the credits in the animation, and this tickled my heart because I connected with this group of people after this film had been released, but Studio Chizu, I mean they've had big ambitions. I mean they really they want to become a Ghibli level company.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I mean, Ghibli's a high watermark, but I think they're doing some great work.
Yeah, it has that similar tone to Studio Ghibli. If you haven't seen it, folks, it's one of those sort of quiet, kind of slice of life animes that Ghibli tends to do. Not a big, loud, fighty anime.
Yeah, which was an interesting thing for me because that was not what I was expecting going into it. So I've not seen all of Hosoda's films, but so for instance, it's Summer Wars. That is, I mean, it is fun, but it's definitely very much in the cranked up to 11. Let's throw all of our wild ideas at the screen, and it's like if some of them stick, great. If some of them don't stick, that's okay because we're going to have more ideas soon after.
Mm.
And this is not that film. This
Okay.
is the opposite of showing up for big, loud, screaming faces and fan service. And I
Well,
think I mean all the better for it.
this studio does Neon Genesis Evangelion, so yeah, they could definitely go in another direction when they want to.
Yeah, yeah.
So as we said earlier, this is a little bit of a Type 3 werewolf movie in that we get a little bit of Secret Lives of Werewolves, but it's not really an entire society or culture. It's just one little family. Some girl in
Yeah,
college falls in love with a wolf boy, and then it's not really a horror film per se, but there are a few moments in it that are a little distressing.
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, the distressing moments are more based on survival than they are, you know, the uncanny or the horrific peeking into our world. One
Yeah,
of the things I think is so fascinating about it is how some of the most horrifying moments in the film are wolves in peril, and
yeah,
well, particularly wolf children in peril.
yeah.
But it's yeah, no, it is most definitely not a horror film. You know, the interesting layer at play here is so you know the wolf man who the heroine Hana falls in love with and then has 2 children with who become the titular wolf children. So you know, his whole deal is that he is descended from the Japanese wolf, and the Japanese wolf is extinct. And it's one of these creatures. I don't know. I mean, maybe analogous to like you know, Tasmanian tiger or the dodo, where there's a certain kind of mythology just built up around this animal that was with us up until relatively recently, but is not here anymore.
Hmm.
So it and you know there have been some interesting films made about the Japanese wolf, and I mean, a fair amount of it does hinge on this kind of, Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster-esque idea of like, oh, what if there really is one out there, or is there some kind of mystical connection to it? There's a really excellent film came out last year called Ring Wandering, which hinges on a missing, a quest for a missing Japanese wolf. I, I I know a bit on inside track that it will be coming out in the United States soon. So Ring Wandering, perhaps you can cover it next year. Have a werewolf's coda.
Okay.
Spoiler alert: I'm friends with the directors. He's a great guy and very talented. So thumbs up for Ring Wandering. But back to Wolf Children.
In regards to that, though, a lot of these movies, somebody says, I was bit by a wolf, and someone else says, there's no wolves around here.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not just Japan where they're extinct, but there seems to be large parts of America where people are convinced there's no wolves around these parts. They're just,
Yeah, well,
they're just
maybe that
but there
was
are plenty of werewolves around these parts. So
maybe that was true decades ago, but not so much these days. It's I'm actually off to a party after this known as Coyote Fest, which is named after the coyotes who roam around the neighborhood where I'm living in. So yeah, it's the beasts are among us. I will let you know.
yes, we mentioned earlier 3 types of werewolves, but we didn't.
Yes.
I didn't say what they are, and I think we get actually 2 of them in this movie. So what I'm calling type 1 is you're just a wolf. You just turn into a wolf. Type 2 is a really big wolf, an unnaturally large wolf, like in American Werewolf in London, where it still has the basic shape of a wolf, but it's so big that there's clearly something unnatural going on. And then type 3 is a bipedal wolf man or wolf person. And I believe we see the wolf guy in a wolf man form. So I don't know if they have. Well, yeah, because the kids take on a couple of different forms. So he's in a wolf man form at one point when he's.
That's when that's
girlfriend.
yeah, we get a tender, affectionate bestiality in this.
Yes,
It's,
some furry
which
porn.
yeah, which joking aside is actually I think handled quite delicately and in a lovely way. I mean, it's what's going on, but it neither it neither leans into it in an explicit way nor in a elbow in the ribs like isn't this
Yeah.
weird kind of way.
Well,
And that's very hard to
it is not handled that way in Wolf Cop, I will tell you.
do.
But
Well,
we do then later see him in a full wolf form, and sadly, spoilers, people. Oh, of course, we've been spoiling all the movies that we've discussed. He ends up dead. Does he get? He doesn't get shot though. He gets like drowned. He gets caught out in a bad rain.
well, it's
He
again
falls into.
to this movie's credit, it like one of the things I enjoyed about this is it's fairly oblique about aspects of the plot that I think another film might kind of hammer home on the head more. I mean, the implication is that he went feral looking for food for his children and drowned in a flooded sewer. But it's I think one of the interesting choices is that we don't see his death, but it really does linger on showing his lifeless body and then showing his lifeless body getting zipped up and put into a trash pickup truck, and which like it's interesting. I mean, I was struck just in the way it was staged, how there's no gore, there's no overt human cruelty in it. It's fairly matter of fact, and yet I think it's quite a bit more horrific than if it had been the evil authorities chasing down the poor hapless wolf. So I think again, hats off. I think it staged very, very effectively.
Yeah, it was a powerful moment. But as far as the form the werewolf takes, the kids as they're growing up, so she gets pregnant and has twins. No, not twins. She'd already had one baby and was pregnant with the second one.
They get I think they're 1 year apart, judging by when they
Yeah.
go to elementary school.
Yeah.
Older sister, younger
So,
brother. Yeah.
But as they're growing and learning to deal with it, they can kind of wolf out in varying degrees. So their ears might just start to poke up and their teeth might start to poke out, or they turn fully into a wolf. They can have degrees of transformation, and
Well, so, I mean, yeah, I
varying
mean that
degree
brings
of
up.
control over it.
Yeah, I mean that brings up a couple of things that struck me. So one is I just think it's really charming, the way they show, the children wolfing out, basically being an extension of kids spazzing out or having the kind of the emotional outburst that all children do.
Yeah.
It's essentially, portray, whenever the kids have a temper tantrum or get really excited, they wolf out. And the animation, I think, is really beautifully observed. I think both for the way children will, have these sort of biblical fits of hysteria when they don't get their way or when they get excited, but also the way dogs will, absolutely spaz out when something triggers them. So it's, I mean, I think well observed and really beautifully animated. The other thing that struck me is this is where I'm curious, comparing how you compare the transformations in this to the other transformations you've seen is, there's a few scenes in it where we see, the transformation from human to wolf is animated and there on screen. Sometimes it's handled more obliquely. There's a neat scene where a character transforms behind a curtain and you just get a silhouette. But sometimes the transformation is right there, and I think this is part of where animation as a medium works to the advantage, because you don't, they can kind of fudge what's going on with the fur and all this, but it's
Right.
really, I think, really well realized.
Mm-hmm. So compared to other ones, well, I mean, yeah, of course, in animation they have it easy. There's a tendency to have in the old-fashioned ones, you have this sort of fade in that happens, and then in the newer ones, the transformations tend to be very painful.
Yeah, because
the idea of your body changing shape so dramatically, it's if your bones and your skin and your muscles are all stretching out and changing, that would probably be painful. So a lot of the newer versions get very graphic with that. Other ones are, it's graphic but also unrealistic in that they sort of just tear away their outer skin and the wolf skin's underneath, and then presumably they do that again when they change back, tear off the wolf skin, and there's a fresh human skin underneath. I don't know if that's a problem for maintaining tattoos if you have to go through that version. These guys seem to have it pretty easy.
Weight loss. Yeah. It's interesting. I was saying that there are no wolves in Ike Boys in my film. However, as we're talking, one thing that's coming back to me is my sound designers and we actually did a fairly deep dive into the transformation scenes in The Howling, because we wanted to have a similar kind of sound design for when Vic first transforms into the kaiju. Again, so like, we're like, what is the sound of stretching skin? What is the sound of bones growing that fast? Like what is it? What does it sound like when you have a prodigious amount of fur growing? I mean, the answer is, to make those sounds work, it's not one thing. It's many different sounds layered on top of one another and processed. I could nerd out at length about all of that, but it was definitely a big inspiration. So yeah, I guess what do we know? It all comes back to werewolves. I guess I got some got some werewolves in my latest movie after all.
You got your werewolf in my kaiju. Uh, so yeah, these guys have it pretty easy as far as the transformation. They can do it quickly, and it seems fairly painless. So that's good. That's good for them.
Yeah, they do. What's more interesting is it plays with the idea of sort of living a human life versus living a wolf life. And one of the things that tend to happen is whenever they wolf out, they tend to also spaz out, and so there are some scenes which I struck me as rather gleeful where they're absolutely running ramshackle through houses, through public spaces, not knocking things over, kicking up dust. So there's it seems that there's a certain kind of pleasure taken by the filmmakers in seeing wolves tear up homes and tear up civilization.
Uh-huh. Now, one thing I found interesting is Ame
Yeah.
at first does not want to be a wolf. Yuki seems pretty comfortable with being a wolf in the beginning, and Ame does not want to be a wolf. And then by the end, that's all he wants to be.
Yeah.
He starts hanging out with some fox out in the wilderness who's shown him the ways of being an animal, and he just abandons his poor mother to go off and live as a wolf out in the wilderness.
And the flip side of that is, I mean, it's the ending is ambiguous, but it seems like Yuki, the older sister, that she's mostly chosen a life of just being human. There's a hint where she reveals her wolf form to a friend of hers that, well, maybe she's going to find a way to, kind of make peace between the two different things that she is. But that's, I mean, what we're getting at is what's really at the heart of the film is sort of this question of, can someone be two things at once, or do they have to choose? And I think the way the movie answers it is, well, it depends. Sometimes it does become just a choice. Sometimes you can find a way to let them coexist. Again, I'll say props to the writers for showing the ambiguity there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yuki definitely starts off, I'm a wolf, and then she's kind of, as she gets older, she's kind of embarrassed about it, doesn't want the boy to know. And accidentally hurts a boy he's, to be fair, is being an asshole.
Yeah,
because he's a boy and he likes her, and he doesn't know how to. Well, for one thing, she's not interested in him, or at least is avoiding him because of her problem. But he doesn't know how to deal with it, so he acts like a jerk.
Well, he does the classic teenage boy thing of, I know a way I get girls to like me is just be like sort of wear them down with constant attention. So it's yes. Young men watching this film, do not. He is not a role model for you. Particularly when he starts talking about running away from home and making his living as a boxer. That is not a wise life.
Another movie where the girl says. There's another movie we watched where the girl literally runs away from the guy and he will not leave her alone.
Wow. Well, we're sensing there's some patterns emerging here.
Yes, but I did appreciate his. When she strikes out at him, he calms the fuck down and also doesn't out her. He doesn't give away her secret, and he claims that it wasn't her that bit him or scratched him or whatever that cut him. He claims that he did it himself by accident or something.
Yeah, well, this gets into one of the other interesting themes going on in the film. Is so much of the film is, I mean, sure, it's about werewolves, kind of, sort of. Really, at its heart, I mean, it's about raising children, and just how darn hard it is to raise children and raise them well, and sort of the questions that parents ask themselves about, am I doing this right? And then then children growing up, they sort of they take in whatever is given to them. So the again, spoiler alert. I would say more or less, Hana, it works out with her children. I mean, sure, one of them, chooses the life of a wolf and leaves her, but I think he does so in a loving, respectful way. But yeah, Yuki's, not wouldn't call him a boyfriend, friend who is a boy. I mean, the implication is that he comes from a reasonably well-to-do house with a beautiful mother, and kind of everything is like is sort of keeping up with the Joneses, prim and proper sort of thing. Whereas Yuki and Ame, they're raised by their mother is just barely getting by, and really struggling.
She had moved into a basically abandoned house that was falling
Well,
apart because
well,
it was
this
far
is
away from things.
yeah. Well, this is another an interesting layer to the film is Japan is as is known, the population is shrinking, and a lot of small towns are slowly dying out. So this is a real phenomenon of there are a lot of abandoned homes in the countryside, and there are plenty of people who romanticize the quote unquote simple country life and move out, as Hana does, and quickly get overwhelmed by how tough it is to actually live off the land and eke
Yeah.
out an existence. That kind of culture clash again, and this is speaking from friends I know who live in urban Japan, but then friends who live in the countryside. I would say overall it's an authentic and I think surprisingly nuanced portrayal of what that culture gap is like.
Right.
Yeah, the only thing it doesn't show is just how darn much alcohol men drink. But I don't know. It's a family movie.
I was curious about that whole thing though, because she has no money, she has no job starting out, and yet
Yeah.
she is able to get this house and start fixing it up. But I guess if these things are basically abandoned and the villages are dying, they might be selling them off for cheap.
Oh, they do sell them off for cheap. I've heard some. I've talked to some friends about this, and I've heard it's like stag. I mean, you can get a mansion for. I mean, a few $1,000s. Uh,
Okay. Well, I guess I'm moving
I
to
mean,
Japan.
well, yeah, but as the film points out, it's sort of like getting a car. It's like then there's all of the fees that go into
Yeah.
to keeping it up, and then it's like you add on like either you toil and toil to raise your own food, or you drive a big distance to get so there is no free lunch.
Yeah. I did like how the whole community was very supportive and helped her out.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and I have to wonder if over time they began to figure out what was going on and just kept their mouths shut about it,
Well,
because
it
little
would
things would slip out.
it would seem entirely reasonable. And the other thing is, there are other thing about the Japanese countryside is there are so many local legends and so much local folklore that I would have a hunch these people would not be unfamiliar with the idea of strange creatures living in the mountains and wolf people.
Right.
So it seems quite possible that there would be some kind of collective pact of silence going on.
This movie is not widely available. You can find it on Crunchyroll. I found it at my local library.
Oh, okay.
And then there was a scratch partway through that almost ruined everything, but I managed to work around it.
Well, I watched it on Crunchyroll, and it was a good quality stream. They have the Japanese, which I watched, but also the English dub. So yeah, if you get Crunchyroll, it's available. Yeah, but also Yay Libraries, underused resource. But by the way, so the have you had any howl-offs on the show yet? Any
No, no,
oh well,
no.
yes, yeah. So I was hanging out with friends with a who had a very skittish little rat terrier a few weeks ago, and like I mean I think so I'm a dyed in the wool cat person, so I think the rat terrier smelled the cat on me. I think he was generally nervous around the other strangers. So what we finally did is we thought, okay, well let's communicate to him on his own terms. So we started howling, and we did that. He joined in, and we had a howl off, and it was the most amazing thing. We were all friends after that.
That's amazing.
So yeah, it works. It works. However, I'm not going to do that. Uh, Even though I broached the subject, I will not do a howl off for you here because the cats are hanging out with me asleep, and I
Okay.
would not. That would not be kosher. Inviting wolf spirit into a room with cats. So
All the cats have disappeared around here. I don't know if the coyotes got them or what, because I haven't seen coyotes. There's
wow.
been a growth in the bird and rabbit population.
Yeah.
All all the
That's
cats.
a yes.
My cats wandered off and didn't come back, and
Oh,
no new ones. No new ones have shown up.
oh,
I
wow.
mean, one of them. One
Oh,
of them was two of them were just a couple assholes that hung around and ate the food, but the other one was, my cat that I had for years, but it was an outdoor cat, and she would often wander off for a couple days, but would always come back. But she didn't come back, and this other cat at the same time disappeared at the same time, and then the third one I think just got lonely and wandered off.
yeah,
And that
they
one was
travel.
never very friendly to begin with. But I've noticed in the whole neighborhood, I haven't seen any cats, and I've been seeing more birds and more rabbits. So I don't know what's going on with that. It's weird.
Yeah, whenever cats are in abundance, they tend to bring gifts. More than a few times I've had cats put dead baby bunnies on my pillow, which on the one hand I was delighted by the gesture of affection. On the other, I was horrified by the gesture of affection. So
Yeah.
it's the circle of life.
Well, Eric, I think we've come to the part of the show where we give the movie a rating. We are using a
Oh
moon
yes.
phase scale this year.
Oh,
So it's still a 5-point scale as usual, but it's moon phases. So it's a new moon, quarter, half, 3/4, or full. What
okay.
phase are you going to give to Wolf Children?
I'm going to give it a 3/4, edging towards full. I was surprised how much I enjoyed this. I've got a few quibbles throughout, but there's a lot going on in here, and there were some moments that there are a lot of things that are far more subtle than I think a lesser film would have handled them, and there are a few moments that really genuinely hit me that I was not expecting. So yeah, won't say quite full, but edging towards full.
Okay. Yeah, I think 3/4 is a fair rating. I will also give it a 3/4 moon. So there you go, folks. Wolf Children. You can watch it on Crunchyroll or see if your local library has it. That is going to
Question:
wrap it. Yes.
Have any of the films you covered been a super moon?
I don't think so. There are
Or
two different
a-
movies that we're going to record called Blood Moon.
I was gonna say, I mean, like the writing's on the wall right
But
there. So
yeah, but I have not seen one that addressed a supermoon.
Oh, I'm in for a rating.
For a rating.
Yeah, I mean,
No, we haven't. I see.
I mean,
I
I'm,
see
you
what
know,
you're
if
saying.
we were to ever have, an Oscar-worthy, Wolfman film, it's like, you're like, yeah,
I mean, I haven't come across one that's like Casablanca level, if that's what you're saying.
yeah.
I do.
Well,
I mean, I gave the Wolfman a full moon, and
yes, yes.
I think we gave American Werewolf in London a full moon.
Yeah, those are
But
both. Yeah, I
we
would
had
give
a
The
couple
Howling
of.
a full moon as well. But I mean, it's imperfect, but I just love that movie so much.
We haven't done that one because it's not readily available, but all of the stupid sequels are.
That is deeply, deeply, deeply unfortunate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm trying to.
Um,
There's been a few. There's been a few like Wolf Children that are not as easy to get, but I'm trying to keep most of the films on the list things that our listeners can easily stream. They're either free with ads or they're on common platforms like HBO and Netflix and things like that. I stayed away from both Wolfen and Howling for that reason.
Yeah. Well, I think director Joe Dante, he's probably more available than The Howling is because he's just I haven't interacted with him personally, but word on the street from a lot of friends of mine, he is very accessible both online and off, and apparently it's just a super welcoming. I mean, like I think he accepts quite a few Facebook friend requests. Just like he regularly mentors young filmmakers. So I don't know, maybe go straight to the source, ask him for a hookup.
Next year. Next year we'll get it and see if we can get him on the show.
Hey, I mean, he is a dyed in the wool cool dude.
All right. Well, never hurts to ask. So we'll look into that for another occasion. Well, Eric, thank you very much for joining me. Speaking of accessible directors, check out his movie EK Boys on many of the streaming services. We'll be back tomorrow with another werewolf movie. Until then, I have been Precious D. Remember to keep calm and take shelter in basements. Please do not misuse science. We will not see you, but you will hear us next time on Monster Movie Fun Time Go. You've been listening to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your podcasting platform of choice. Our theme song is by the Texacato Folk Rock Punk featuring Lita Lopez. You can support the show, find links to our social media, and even leave us a voice message at anchor.fm/MMFTG.
Fun time go!